In my experience, Yu-Gi-Oh! Shows are only as good as the main rivals, the character that truly pushes our protagonist to surpass their limits and push them further than ever before, and today I'll be ranking every single one of them from worst to best. Before we get started, I just want to mention to everyone that I have a Discord you can join using the link in the first line in the description where we talk all things Yu-Gi-Oh! And about my channel, and while you're down there I'd really appreciate it if you could like, comment and subscribe, as it means so much to me and really helps the channel. With that said, let's get right to it. Number 11. Sylvio Sawatari. In the bottom spot, I'm going with Sylvio Sawatari. Admittedly, when it comes to comedic value, Sylvio has that in bundles, but outside of that, he doesn't really have too many redeeming qualities. From his introduction to the series, he was talked about as a top-tier duelist, and one of the few people who was able to use the pendulum summoning technique, but my guy didn't win a single duel on his own. I believe the idea with Sylvio was that he had talent but consistently let his ego get in the way, but after the first arc, he became nothing but a comedy character and didn't help advance the plot in the slightest. Number 10. Luke Callister. Just barely avoiding the bottom spot is Luke Callister. I mentioned in my last video that I really haven't seen too much of Yu-Gi-Oh! 7, so I'm partially going off of others' opinions here. And from what I've seen when it comes to dueling, Luke is actually one of the best in the series with an extremely impressive win-loss record. However, this did prove to be an issue as the series went on. Being a character that wins all the time can be really cool. Just look at someone like Yusei. But Luke really didn't face many, if any, hardships to surpass and grow as a character, so he was just the same guy for the whole show. Number 9. Reginald Castle, aka Shark. I have to start by mentioning I like every character from this point, so I can't help but feel bad having any of them this low. In the 9th spot we have Shark. Now, as I said, he is only this low because I prefer others, but I'm also very torn on my feelings towards Shark in a way that I'm not with others. Seemingly beginning Zexal was what came across as a throwaway bully. He quickly became a core component of the main cast and series, slowly coming around to Yuma and focusing on his desperate need for revenge against Quattro, and he became quite likeable in his own way, but suddenly when you think you've got him figured out, they introduce his sister in a really cool and unique twist. However, whilst I actually really enjoy the Baryon arc upon reflection, I'll never forget how frustrated I was when he was revealed to be a Baryon. His duels were fun and his Shark deck was undeniably cool, but when he became a Baryon, I felt as though the character I spent so many episodes getting to know was just torn away from me for simple shock value, and for that reason, he's 9th on the list. Number 8. Varys, aka Revolver. I'm starting this one off simply by talking about Revolver's design. It's so cool. I love the mask he wears and the way it symbolises the way he tried to keep his identity secret from the world and hiding his insecurities of the pain he feels in the real world. Also, we have to mention how intimidating he was in the first season. The aura that Revolver would exude and the attention of the audience he demanded in every single time he was on the screen is untouchable by almost every other rival on this list. Lastly, the fact he eventually becomes an ally of Playmaker due to a simple but brilliantly executed "the enemy of my enemy is my friend" storyline is something I always enjoy. I have him here simply because I prefer the rivals above him on the list, not because he's got many negatives in his own right. Number 7. Chaz Princeton. Chaz it up. What a guy, man. I feel like Chaz was introduced in an almost parallel way to Shark, but they couldn't have taken a more different direction with the character development. I know I might get some stick for having him so high, but at least let me explain why. Firstly, Chaz runs 2 different decks in the show, and I love the archetype of both. The Armed Dragons are the absolute coolest deck from the early days of the TCG, and one I personally used after saving up and buying them for myself from my pocket money when I was a kid. And then he begins using Ojamas, which, whilst not as good cards as the Armed Dragons, were such core components of Chaz's character and a great part of comedic relief in the show to contrast Chaz's serious and short-fused personality. Also, whilst his design in the show was fairly simple, all of his looks were great. Obviously, the basic obelisk blue jacket he started with isn't anything to write home about. His Society of Light and black jacket attires were really nice on the eye. Lastly, the storyline of Chaz leaving Jewel Academy, joining North Academy and coming back to face Jaden with the Armed Dragons was a systematic character breakdown on Chaz that helped fans begin to really fall in love with his complex personality. Number 6. Aster Phoenix. Another GX character taking up the 6th spot on this list, and now we have Aster Phoenix. Putting him this high was something I didn't originally anticipate when drawing up this list, but the more I thought about it, the higher up he kept shifting. Aster was an incredibly intriguing character from the very beginning. Dueling Jaden with a random deck just to test him, to suddenly making a huge impact on the series with the evil heroes and defeating Zane on the pro circuit. He was an instantly credible threat from that moment onwards, not to mention the desperation you felt to see more of him and understand why he had evil versions of the protagonist cards. All of this was followed up by him being a key part of the Society of Light storyline, essentially being used as Sartorius' puppet, where you knew you were supposed to feel sympathy for him, but his own ego and insufferable attitude made it so hard and forced you as a viewer to wrestle with your own feelings towards him. Oh, and you didn't think I would do all of Aster's part without mentioning the Destiny heroes, right? Not a chance. Just another archetype from GX that was super popular with awesome card designs, not to mention how well they blended with the character himself. Number 5. Declan Akaba. When people think about Aura, you may think of The Rock or Roman Reigns, but I think of Declan Akaba. Declan personifies cool, calm and collected. From his introduction as Yuya's opponent for the Leo Institute all the way up until he helped the fight against Zork, he was confident in his abilities and you can't really blame him. With the help of his Triple D cards, Declan rarely lost a duel. Just 3 out of his 12 to be exact. One being a duel against Yuya in which he forfeits, another against Zork, but I don't like to include that one because Zork just manhandled every other important character in the show, and then the final duel of the series against Yuya. Now, I don't know how many of you will agree with having Declan in this spot, but for me, he deserves it. I can remember watching Arc 5 in my mid-teens when I was slightly falling out of love with the show, and I was still incredibly intrigued by his character. Number 4. Kite Tenjo. In a show full of more childish characters, Kite Tenjo is a wonderfully nuanced character. Not only is he so intriguing from his first moments on screen, literally freezing time, you later find out he is such a tortured soul, yet an incredibly loving man. Kite's relationship with his little brother is a genuinely compelling story and used so well to develop his relationship with Yuma. Had Yuma not been so caring towards Heart, then the relationship between Kite and Yuma would never have been anywhere near as interesting. Also, I've referred to Kite many times as Chibi Kaiba because Galaxy Eye's Photon Dragon always felt incredibly Blue Eyes inspired, and he's also a mega rich douchebag, so if you can't see the comparisons, then I don't know what to tell you. Anyway, as I frequently say on these lists, he only misses out on the podium because I think there's 3 better, not because I think he's not good enough to be there. Number 3. Zane Trusdale. When I started writing this video, I honestly assumed that I would put Zane at number 1, as he's honestly my favourite Yu-Gi-Oh character of all time. But at this point I realised, in terms of being a rival, he's probably not the best. While he was used to great effect in early GX being the first guy to beat Jaden and built up to be unbeatable, he really didn't interact with Jaden as a main rival as much as you would have liked him to. Not only does Zane have one of the coolest archetypes in Cyber Dragons, he actually evolves as a character when he becomes the Hell Kaiser and still has one of the coolest decks in the form of the Cyber Darks. Zane's graduation match with Jaden is definitely one of the peaks of the entire show for me, and I love the fact that Jaden still wasn't able to defeat him, only managing to scrape a draw. Number 2. Setto Kaiba. I had to mention this when I put Yugi at number 2 in the protagonist ranking video, which you should go watch after this if you haven't already, but don't shout at me for this. If Setto Kaiba is your number 1, that's cool, and I wouldn't argue it, but he's just barely pipped to number 1 for me. Setto Kaiba is the original rival, the man with the greatest card ever made in Blue Eyes White Dragon, and an all-round fan favourite. He went from beating up an old man only to destroy one of his cards, all the way to assisting the greatest foe in saving the world in ancient Egypt. He had one hell of a run. Kaiba isn't number 2 for me because I'm able to really find flaws, so allow me to just run through the positives. He's an iconic character. Some may argue even more iconic than Yugi himself due to Blue Eyes and his sufferable attitude but undeniable talent. He was built as a real final boss from episode 1, which was remarkable in itself due to the fact that he actually lost to Yugi countless times, yet he never seemed to lose that aura that he always gave off. I also feel that through the show, even though he wasn't who you'd expect to relate to, there's so many things that allow you to empathise with Kaiba and put yourself in his shoes. Whether that's due to simple things like his denial of the Millennium Powers, much like you would yourself if this happened in the real world, all the way down to the stories of adoption, abuse from his parents, and protection and love he gives to his little brother. Kaiba is an excellent character, but I just couldn't put him on top of this list because of one man. Number 1. Jack Atlas. And then there was one. Taking the top spot on my list as the greatest rival in Yu-Gi-Oh history is the master of faster, the one who rules the duels, Jack Atlas. Jack is not only one of the best rivals in the series, but one of the best characters full stop. Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds undoubtedly has its haters, and in some circumstances, I can see why. However, I have never met anyone who doesn't like Jack's character. Jack Atlas has incredible development through the series, and it couldn't be more obvious when you look at his relationship with Yusei. As an audience, we're led to despising Jack from early on in the show when we discover he stole our protagonist's ace monster and fled the hellhole they lived in together, selfishly escaping to become a worldwide celebrity and dueling champion. But as you get deeper into the story, it really makes sense as to why, and he even rekindles his friendship with Yusei. Fans also love him for his relationship with Carly, but due to things that came to light with Carly's voice actor, we never got a true ending to their relationship story, which upsets me to this day. Obviously, I also have to mention Jack's badass attire and dual runner. His dual runner being bright white to match his jacket really gave this god complex vibe, which suited his character to a T, also avoiding the classic dark colours used to represent the character of this ilk. Lastly, I just wanted to briefly mention the cherry on top. He's a really good duelist, and it's shown in the show, not just talked about and never seen. A big part of the reason for that is his ace monster, Red Dragon Archfiend. Now, don't get me wrong, I know it's no blue eyes, but it's got an incredible design and rivals Stardust Dragon in the exact same way that Jack rivals Yusei. And that's my list. Thank you so much for watching, and I can only apologise for how long this hiatus has been. It was never supposed to go this long, but I am back now. I won't put a date on my next video, but I am going to work as hard as I can to get it out soon. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, as it helps the channel more than you know, and I'll see you in the next one.